Sequels always tend to have a hard time. They have to live to the expectations of their predecessors while improving on the formula. They have to feel the same, yet very different. They must have the same things plus something else. Nothing should change, but nothing should stay the same. And sometimes, if something doesn't feel great, it can be perceived as something awful. You see, as a kid, when I heard of the news of Halo 2 coming out soon, my brother and I were completely ecstatic. It was time to go back to join the fight on a new story against the Covenant and maybe the Flood, and once again in the company of Master Chief and Cortana. I remember watching gaming shows on TV that covered Halo 2 on almost every episode. By the way, shout out to Alexandra Vicencio from Cybernet. You made my preteen years more fun in the afternoons. So on these segments, they would talk about the new vehicles, weapons, Covenant races, and Master Chief's armor. But the part I was most excited about was something that I read on a magazine. The Covenant had found Earth, and we were going to fight in it. I was intrigued that even after our supposed victory from Combat Evolved, we were still losing. And if that didn't help tilt the scale in our favor, how could this end for humanity? So week by week, we were on the lookout for the new information on Halo 2, and I remember playing the trailer for Halo 2 that came in the Brute Force disc time and time again. And by the way, we'll talk about Brute Force later in the future, I promise that one is a very interesting one. And after months of waiting, it finally came out, and we couldn't buy it on launch. Actually, we got it like until a month or two later after launch, but we got to play it like a week later after release on a friend's house. But we only played multiplayer because there were four of us and we didn't want it to play on pairs and taking turns. And for what it was, I was having fun. Trying out all the new vehicles, all the new weapons, fighting my friends on local multiplayer. But for some reason as a kid, I didn't like Halo 2. I know, it's a sacrilege, almost heresy to say something like that. But you see, this is the issue. I was expecting something more simple. I like Combat Evolved, an us versus them story. But as soon as the game starts, we hear about the Arbiter and we start to play missions as a member of the Filthy Covenant. I wasn't happy with how things got more complex, how we learn about the internal turmoil of the Covenant, the complexity of the Flood and the Gravemind even being a well-spoken being. I wanted things to stay the same, yet feel different. I wanted Halo 2 to be Halo Combat Evolved, but more. In the end, I got an excellent game that is Halo 2, and I'll jump into it in a minute on when and why I changed my mind. The first change I didn't like were the weapons. Sure, I like dual wielding, it's a fun mechanic, but I wasn't a fan of the SMG. I was trying to use it as an assault rifle, which clearly isn't the case. And speaking of rifles, I hated the battle rifle. I didn't like the burst shots, I like only to shoot blindly and hit something like in the assault rifle. But again, I wanted the assault rifle from Combat Evolved, and it was nowhere to be seen. And look, I won't say I still fully love the decision to get rid of the assault rifle for Halo 2 and the downgrade treatment that the Magnum got. The assault rifle for me, it's the epitome of a good weapon. A large magazine, punchy sound, a magnificent and elegant design. Not so functional, how could someone name that thing, am I right? But instead we got the submachine gun with a meh sound. And the mags were empty in very few seconds, which as any submachine gun, they are for close quarters and small environments, hence why it didn't have so much reach. Reach. Neat. And then on the other hand, we have the battle rifle. It's supposed to be a marksman's rifle. It's supposed to take enemies from afar, hence why it had a slower fire rate, shot and bursts, and had a scope. And Halo 2, to be fair, had even larger environments compared to Combat Evolved, where the battle rifle truly shines. The second change I didn't like was the Arbiter. I felt betrayed by the team of devs in Bungie. We weren't supposed to feel sympathy for the Covenant species. The elites were the strongest the Covenant had to offer, and I hated them for beating humanity at every single turn. And now I get to play as one of them, hunting traitors on this politically complex story that Halo 2 was taking place. By the way, it's not bad that a story can be complex. I was just, again, a whiny little kid. So slowly we're learning that humanity, in order to beat the Covenant had to crumble from the inside. That's what disappointed me the most. We couldn't beat the Covenant. We couldn't win. They could only lose by their own merit, not ours. Again, I can see why this is a whiny kid, but part of me still believes that. So, that was pretty much my perception of Halo 2 at a young age. An ungrateful sequel with not a lot to give outside of being too experimental. Now, the question stands. On my perception, were there complaints that were justified? And is Halo 2 the weakest link for me still now as an adult? And before going into this in more depth, just a heads up, I only played the multiplayer once and it was a local multiplayer, not online, so I won't be talking about multiplayer. I didn't know what online gaming meant until I played Halo 3, but that's something for later down on another video. Now with that said, recently I played Halo 2 Anniversary Edition on the Master Chief Collection. By the way, rest in peace Blow Me Away by Breaking Benjamin, F's in the chat please. I didn't know this song wasn't in the game until I played it a few days ago as I wrote this. But actually it was this time around was my second time playing Halo 2 Anniversary Edition. But the first time a couple of years back, a game-breaking bug prevented me to play Delta Halo and stopped my progress, so I couldn't go on back then. But for the sake of this video I attempted it and the bug seems to be gone, since I could finish the game at the moment I wrote this. But okay, enough filler. On to the question. What is my experience now as an adult? Do I still dislike Halo 2? Or was I just an ungrateful brat who was 100% wrong? Well, I wasn't kind of wrong with some of my previous statements as a kid. Halo 2 has so many things I didn't like, and I'm not 100% sure if they are anniversary issues, some of them, but others are just part of the game itself. I'll start with the bad things that I still feel were very wrong so that we can end this on a good note. But just to be clear, the issues don't make Halo 2 a bad game, nor a bad Halo game. All good? Okay, let's go. First off, there's the ammo. There's just so little amount of ammo for any magazine weapon, and you have only 4 to 5 mags maximum. You see, the assault rifle in Combat Evolved had 60 rounds per mag, and you could hold up to 600 extra rounds, making it 10 extra mags. One full load of ammo could last you pretty much the whole mission, making swapping for another weapon more a choice than a necessity. The battle rifle in Halo 2 has 36 rounds per mag, and up to 108 rounds extra, which are barely 3 mags. 4 total if you count the mag you already have in the battle rifle. The Combat Evolved Needler also had 20 rounds per mag and 100 extra total, making 5 extra mags. And yes, I know that Halo 2 the Needler has 30 rounds per mag and 120 extra rounds, which are extra 4 mags, but the Needler in Halo 2 is really bad. The Needler in Combat Evolved was actually competent. It's still, to this date, my favorite weapon of the Covenant in Combat Evolved. The needles from Combat Evolved are way better at pursuing enemies compared to Halo 2's. The fire rate starts going faster the longer you hold the fire button or the trigger, making it easier for you to conserve ammo. The Halo 2 Needler smokes through mags like my chain smoker uncle does through a pack of CDs, and the explosion of overloaded Needler rounds was significantly reduced in Halo 2 compared to Combat Evolved. Also, sometimes I felt the headshots a bit off. Sometimes they landed and did the trick, but other times they weren't enough to knock down an enemy. Speaking of knocking down, have you ever had a dream where you were fighting something or someone and your punches felt more like gently shoving them? Well, that's how I feel about melee mechanics in Halo 2. Halo's formula is very simple. You shoot and you punch. This formula can easily be applied in many difficulties, even from heroic and below that difficulty. On Legendary though, I don't recommend that being your main game plan. Combat Evolved had a punchy sound for melee, and it did a lot of damage. An enemy without a shield could go down with one or sometimes two hits. On Halo 2, the amount of times I got cornered and resorted to using melee against pretty much any already wounded enemy, and my hits taking way more time to take down the enemy than simply reloading and firing were too many to count. So much so that by the second half of the game, I generally avoided melee combat overall. That wasn't so easily adopted when the brutes or the flood were present, since they resort to melee very often. So yeah, melee in Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2 is honestly bad. This took away from the basic formula that made Halo Combat Evolved so good, where you could be out of ammo but not out of options. And the remaining option was still a very good option. Okay, now I just mentioned the flood, and that was one of my biggest disappointments as a kid, and to a certain degree they still are to this day. Remember how in Combat Evolved the flood were this huge threat on all sentient life in the galaxy? The awesome yet scary Lovecraftian horror that were the flood? Here they are treated as a mere annoyance for the plot. I didn't mind the Gravemind this time. I think it's a cool concept that the Flood are connected as a soul organism scattered in many bodies, learning and consuming to keep learning. But the fact that the Flood got reduced only to the Parasite for the Arbiter's mission and the Robbers of the Amber Clad in one of the last missions where you play as Master Chief, that is just silly to me. Also, they became so boring to fight that I always ran past them whenever I could. And look, I get that they need to be a bit more tough than your average flesh sack like any human or any unshielded member of the Covenant in order for the player to feel that they are actually a threat. But they are bullet sponges in Halo 2. On Combat Evolved they were also bullet spongy, but if you shoot them in the torso. If you shoot them in extremities, you could dismember them relatively easy if you had good aim. And to be fair, you still can do that in Halo 2. But it seemed to me that they took way too much damage in order to destroy one of their limbs, which it was a neat strategy you learn in Combat Evolved after facing them a first time. And in this time around, I got extremely annoyed when I faced the Flood. I saw them more like the annoying little kid in your group of friends that due to him always wanting to hang out with your group of friends, you weren't allowed to do cooler stuff like going to another neighborhood to hang out with other kids because that kid would either cry or tell his irresponsible parents that allowed him to hang out with kids that they were older than him that we were doing dangerous or weird stuff. In this time around, the Flood felt more like a leash, more than an entertaining enemy to fight this time around. And we won't start with the scary factor, cause there is none. And also the Sentinels suck too, by the way. I swear, Flood levels, I would just zoom through them. I pretty much did a speedrun of those levels whenever I could, because I was bored when I was fighting the Flood. The next thing is the soundtrack. And now I know that Halo 2 has a Mjolnir mix, and the original game had the song from Breaking Benjamin. But the rest of the songs, at least on the classical version, didn't felt so cool for me. The anniversary missions, well, the anniversary version of the missions were really cool actually, but whenever a cool song came in during gameplay, I changed to classic mode, and the music felt a bit meh. Maybe this is due to the disadvantage the musical score has in Halo 2 compared to Anniversary Edition in the Master Chief Collection. Also, speaking of sounds, if you are unlucky as I am, and your game is in Latin American Spanish, I'm from Mexico remember, so that is an option, the dubbing is awful. Every major voice except the Covenant's voice actors suck real bad. I had a Mandela effect because I remember liking the voices in Halo in Latin American Spanish, but then I remember I only played Halo 2 on Spanish for a few brief minutes at my friend's house before playing multiplayer. We got our copy from the US and it didn't have the option to dub to Spanish back then. I remember this while playing recently. I unlocked the memory from my friend being overly excited when he was hearing a line in Spanish from a Marine that had the word bastard in it. You know, we were 12-year-old kids in the early 2000s. Obviously, we were going to be giggling whenever a character cursed on a game. Well, except my brother and I. We already had some training with Conker's Bad Fur Day for the N64, so saying bastard was like a small pat in the back for edgy. But I'm going on a tangent here. My point is, the voice acting in Spanish, it's awful. Chief sounds uninterested to be there and with a weird whistly accent. You know, whistly, like the pitch of the voice goes up and down whenever he talks. I noticed this from the first line Chief talks in Halo 2, where he says, "Tell that to the Covenant." In English, it's Chief alright. Small talk, straight to the point. But in Spanish he sounds off when he says, "Díselo al Covenant."
Díselo al Covenant. Pues, quédate aquí. Lo conseguiremos.
The same happens with Johnson. The voice actor just talks like one of the 90s dub for series like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Those who grew up in Latin America in that era will understand what I'm talking about.
Por completo.
Eso o puede esconderse detrás de mí. ¿Ha terminado ya con mi chico? No le veo las rueditas para principiantes. No se preocupe, lo llevaré de la manita. La Tierra. Hace años que no la veía. Cuando partí para la instrucción básica, la red de defensa orbital no era más que teoría y política. Hay que verla ahora. La Cairo no es más que una de las 300 plataformas geosincrónicas. Ese cañón Mac puede atravesar limpiamente una nave de línea del Covenant.
Cortana sounds like she's worried 99% of the time, and the other 1% of the time she sounds childish.
Llamado Suma Caridad. Parece ser una disculpa formal para los profetas de la verdad y la piedad. Por lo que parece, se precipitó al atacar la tierra. Pide a los demás profetas que lo perdonen por su prematura llegada, asegurando que no se esperaba presencia de humanos.
It's hard to explain how bad they dropped the ball with the dubbing. And I bring this up because Halo 2 was one of the first games ever to be dubbed to Latin American Spanish. We had Spain's Spanish dub for some time back then, but we know that there is a cultural war regarding Spanish dubbing out there. We don't stand each other's dubbing. In Latin America, we can't stand Spain's dubbing, and in Spain, they can't stand Latin American dubbing. But this meant that other games were going to be dubbed, and to be fair, they did later down the road, but it got pretty much in the 360 era. You see Halo 3, Gears of War, God of War later on, Fable 2, Fable 3 are some examples of the games that are dubbed to Latin American Spanish and that they are done pretty well, at least the dubbing. Another thing I can say I didn't like are the levels themselves. It's not that they are bad, just not memorable at all. Before coming back to play Halo 2, I couldn't remember anything from the game. I even questioned my brother why we hated it so much back then. His response was, well, because we were whiny little kids. And to a certain point he was right, but my main concern was, why can't I remember a single thing about any mission from Halo 2? I mean, I could only remember very few things from the space station mission and the assault on Earth. I mean, I remember the Scarab mission, the long bridge while going in the Scorpion tank, the highway using the Warthog. I barely remember the first Arbiter mission. All I could remember was the fact that you were hunting down some heretics. And on Delta Halo, I could only remember the ODST units that drop with you, the fact that it had moving platforms, and obviously that you could punch the Prophet of Free Threat, which was extremely fun. So now that I played it, that is still pretty much what I remember, and I just played the campaign a bit over 24 hours at the moment I'm typing this. Look, obviously I do remember more of the missions, and what you do in them. It's just that they don't have anything else going for them that makes them memorable. You see, in Combat Evolved, I haven't played in a long time at the time I'm writing this, and I can still remember basically every mission, from the Pillar of Autumn, Halo, Truth and Reconciliation, all the way down to the last mission, that is, the Mall. I remember what was in the missions themselves, or if something cool happened. For example, Truth and Reconciliation. It's a very memorable mission, because first, it starts as a sniper/stealth night mission that ends with breaking into a Covenant ship to rescue Captain Keyes and a small group of Marines, and there you learn a bit more about Halo and the Covenant's interest in it. That is just on one mission. In Halo 2, I can remember in more detail the second mission where you end up taking down the Scarab and going through the alleyways of New Mombasa fighting the sniper jackals, but not much else from other missions. And yes, stuff happens in the missions, but nothing too memorable. Usually they are hallways where you fight and you reach a larger arena where you also fight. Oddly enough, the levels weren't memorable, but they were extremely fun for the most part. And here is where we turn a more positive note. I really like that in Halo 2 there was more emphasis on the vehicles. On Combat Evolved, sure, you use vehicles fairly regularly, but you use them more for a brief time, something from take you from point A to point B. They felt more like a small bite of a treat rather than the whole candy bar. Something you could only have for a small amount of time but never fully enjoy it. In here, you have full sequences of a level where the main takeaway is using a vehicle. Even the Banshees have their couple of missions where you use them not only as a necessity for the level, but also there are levels you can hijack them. The Scorpion, I feel it has the most focus now, using it pretty much in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the game on several occasions for an extended period of time. So yeah, I really enjoy the vehicle sections more in Halo 2. Also, the firefights feel more intense in Halo 2. I found myself running from cover to cover more often trying to get an advantage over my opponent, which required me locking in and using my brain to fight the enemy, not just shoot and hope I hit something. I had to think different approaches for the different types of enemies I faced, and for the most part I always attempted to have one precision weapon, a carbine, sniper, battle rifle, or beam rifle, and another weapon that I saw fit for the occasion, like an SMG, like a plasma pistol, like the Needler, whatever. Another thing I liked were the characters, and I know that I already talked about the awful Spanish dub we got, but here we're talking about character progression, motivation, and execution of said motivation. And now as an adult, I feel really glad that the Arbiter felt more like a main character instead of Chief. It's not to say that Chief being the protagonist, but there isn't much to say about Master Chief in this game. He's just the hero, I say in air quotes. He doesn't have any other motivation rather than saving humanity and fighting the Covenant. He doesn't have growth as a character, he learns nothing really, he just fights. But let's dissect the Arbiter's character for a moment. Before Halo 2's events, he was Thel 'Vadamee, the Sangheili commander of the fleet you face in Combat Evolved. He has fallen from grace in the eyes of the prophets due to Halo's destruction. And in order for him to regain, I say in air quotes, the trust, again I say in air quotes, from the Covenant and regain his honor, again I say in air quotes, he takes the mantle of the Arbiter. The Arbiter are pretty much influential Sangheili that are socially pressured into taking sewer sliding missions in order to clear their name once they are unalive, making this a revelation of a mirage of the Arbiter mantle and for what is about to have come later on for the Arbiter. During the Arbiter's missions you are sent to, the character is sent pretty much to unalive, but the Arbiter always comes back victorious and he slowly notices his species is being displaced from the roles inside the Covenant, to the point that they are being hunted down by the Brutes and other Covenant members. And then he finds out the truth about the political intrigue inside the Covenant that is puppeteered by the Prophet of Truth and eventually joining forces with humanity to stop the Prophet's greedy pursuit of the Great Journey. Also, I like the support characters this time around. I like Johnson, having way more screen time now that he has a name. It was used to be called only Sarge back in Combat Evolved, but now he's a fully fledged character with a name in the script. Tartarus is an incredible villain. He's despicable, he's annoying, and he acts all high and mighty all the time. Tartarus is a true villain, and one that we all love to hate. Also, speaking of villains, the prophets are their own kind of evil, always portraying this mask of wisdom and care for their people, but they only care about their own interests. I even have the suspicion that the unaliving of the Prophet of Regret was part of the Prophet of Truth's plan, but the unaliving of the Prophet of Mercy came in as a glad surprise for Truth, so he falls more into this mischievous kind of villain rather than this bad guy kind of villain. I don't know if it makes sense. Then we have Miranda Keyes, who serves the role of our commanding officer this time. But she displays great leadership skills and she faces no less danger than her crew members. She even puts herself on the line of battle if it is needed, whenever it is needed. And now, the story. As a kid, I hated it. I loathed Halo 2's story. I thought it would make Halo less Halo from now on, because this wasn't an us versus them anymore. It was a complex, political story involving betrayal, space parasites, and a threat to extinct all sentient life. But now, as an adult, I loved it. I can say that it was the strongest point for me in this entry, since I relived the story with more age and a better understanding of Halo as a whole, not only as a second part of the game at the time. I know what happens now in Halo 3, but it just makes the events on Halo 2 even more compelling and way more likable. The fall of the Arbiter, his attempts to recover the trust of his hierarchs, the fact that the Covenant weren't expecting humans in their homeworld, and the correlation of their intent of reaching Earth without their desire to invade it, air quotes, and glass it, and the constant unlikely alliances the game makes, like the Gravemind not devouring our characters, since this will give the Flood a better chance of assimilation, make sense now that Halo 3 exists. So you see, the events unfold naturally and smooth as silk. Not a second of a cutscene is wasted. All of them had a purpose, either to move the story forward in a grander scale or to give insight of what is about to happen, like a boss fight, let's say. Also, obviously this is an anniversary edition point, but the cutscenes are just a chef's kiss. They're gorgeous to look at. And the cutscenes themselves, even in Classic, are very dynamic. They feel very much alive, displaying a huge jump from what Combat Evolved was, where the cutscenes, even though they were good, they were also a bit clunky, choppy, blocky at times. Obviously, a thing of its time, to be fair. And now, I don't hate the final cutscene where Master Chief says, "finishing this fight," because now I don't have to wait 3 years and a new console generation to know what happens next. I've always hated cliffhangers. That's why I hated Halo 2's final scene. If you want to tell a story that is segmented into different parts, finish something but leave enough for a continuation. Like, for example, in The Lord of the Rings The Two Towers, the ending with the climactic battle of Helm's Deep, but only give a brief speech by Gollum on how he's going to betray the hobbits. You finish something big, and you continue with the small trails of bread along the way. One last thing I really like is the Arbiter's stealth mechanic. That feature saved my sorry ass a couple of times or gave me an advantage in a firefight. I just wish it came back on other entries, and I know that there's the ability to cloak in Reach, but in 3, for whatever reason, it didn't come back. There is virtually no distinction between Chief and the Arbiter in Halo 3. But it was neat to have it in Halo 2. So, overall, I really like Halo 2, but I still consider it to be the weakest link of the whole Bungie era. This is not to say it isn't a great game, or that it is a bad Halo game. So, in the end, all I'm saying is that I appreciate the effort put into Halo 2, and I am glad they experimented with a lot of new ideas. Even if they didn't land perfectly, they were still a stepping stone to solidify said ideas with Halo 3. But I can't help not to like everything from their experimental era with Halo. Some things just don't stick the landing for me, but I can appreciate Halo 2 for what it is and the legacy it left behind. And also the fact that even if I didn't like it or not back in the day, I was left always wanting more, to know more, to fight more, to try more new things, you know? More, and more. Halo 2 felt like a teenager in the story of Halo. Halo Combat Evolved is the adorable little kid that everybody likes. But once he grows up, he loses his charm and he tries to be himself. And this is a path where he learns and he makes mistakes by experimenting. So that's my perception right now in Halo 2. But what happens with Halo 3? Did we got more when we went back almost 20 years later to finish the fight? And if so, did it held up for me or it fell from grace? I guess we'll have to figure out on the next My History with the Halo franchise video with Halo 3. And before I leave, I know I didn't talk a lot about into detail of the story in Halo 2, but first, the first video took me months, to the point where the editing software I was using had a watermark, and I didn't know it until I wanted to publish the video. And I was so far gone into that video that I left it in the final product because it would mean start all over from weekends of editing the video. And the other reason is that I didn't have a great connection with the story as a kid. And even though I liked it more as an adult, I felt the premise alone is enough to explain what happens, since the events during the missions don't move the plot forward. At least not like in the first half of Halo Combat Evolved. So that's why I decided not to talk a lot about the story. I wanted to leave it more as an enigma. First of all, because, well, it's just the Arbiter and the fall from grace from the Arbiter. The fact that Cortana is left on the High Charity. And that's pretty much it. That's why I didn't went into full detail for the missions and the story inside the missions. And, well, obviously the time constraint. Taking a lot of time with these videos while having a day job, it's not easy. So yeah, I hope this didn't disappoint anyone. I think I'm gonna bring back the story, but I will try to keep it more simplified in Halo 3. I want to combine both of these scenarios, you know. It's an allegory for Halo 2, being a bit experimental before going to solidify my ideas on the third entry of this series. So yeah, this has been Dorgeek speaking to you. Have a great day and take care. Bye bye!